So what I'm going to talk about today is this whole, well, it's the concept of trying to create employee ownership of pensions. So we've all, for quite a few years now, we've all heard a lot about value for money and engagement and how important it is to engage members in their pension, and that is really important. And we've come a long way. There's government initiatives that are helping that, and it's to an extent it's kind of built into our DNA now that we know we have to do that. But I guess what's sort of missing from that conversation, that narrative, is what's the value for employers. So as employers, and obviously many of you in this room, what I'm going to try and just give an overview of is how we can help to drive engagement, to drive ownership of pensions into members' DNAs as well. So why is it important? Well, I suppose the first thing is just the size of the market. So sort of £3 trillion in assets. It's massive in terms of the UK economy, and it's clearly the biggest asset that most employees are going to have. It's obviously, as you can see there, contributes nearly half of UK household wealth, billions of pounds, including probably millions and millions from people in this room, is being paid into pension schemes on behalf of members and by members. But there's still like a view with some people, is this just a tax on my salary? What's the actual point of it? Well, I've got to pay. It comes out of my salary each month, and I don't really understand it, and I don't really kind of value it, crucially. And it's something that employers have to do. So legally, you have to provide a pension, and it's a spend. So if you're doing that, the best thing is to try and actually make sure you're getting some value for it. And it's the biggest benefit cost to employers, I would suspect, in most cases. So a lot of money's going out. Employees typically, and I'm sort of generalising here, don't really value it. So what sort of ways are there potentially to actually help people to value it a bit more about what you're doing for them? So I suppose to sort of think about the sort of life these days. So very few of your employees will actually retire whilst working for you, I suspect. Years ago, there was a golden handshake. People worked their whole lives for one company, and they would genuinely appreciate the pension that they were going to be getting at the end of that. Nowadays, though, it just doesn't really happen anymore. There's no job for life anymore. The concept of staying with one employer forever is gone. I mean, there's all sorts of various stats and research been done. Average number of jobs that somebody under 35 has had now is 5. And that's going to sort of continue. And just picking up in interesting on something that Julie said in the previous session about people still think friends and family is the place they go to when they're looking for advice about their pensions. And just 2 days ago, my next door neighbour, who I don't really speak to that often, knocked on my door, and she was saying, "Oh, you work in pensions?" So I said, "Oh yeah." She said, "Oh look, I've got to the point where I'm about to take my pension, but I've got no idea what to do. I've worked for like 11 companies going back to 1980 or something." And she said, I don't know what to do. And she said, "I know one of them's final salary." And so I was thinking, she's probably she's probably typical of a lot of people. And I think that was borne out by what Julie was saying, because people just have lots of jobs and they just lose track of everything. The other thing here is the retirement as a cliff edge is a dying concept. Not many people sort of come into work and finish on a Friday and retire on the Monday. It doesn't really happen. So people are going down maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week, taking a different job, so having a part-time job, and easing into retirement. So that the whole kind of concept of retirement has changed completely. And people are thinking more about later life now as well. So what's life actually going to be like for me when I retire? So if we try and think about what could a model for value be, so how could we define value for employers? Well, I suppose ownership is quite easy to define. It's a sense that it's mine, so I've got a pension, it's mine, I understand it, and it's meaningful. So that's sort of one of the things we want to try and crack. Engagement. So what does engagement actually mean? Is it someone looking at their pension? Is it someone turning up to a presentation? Who knows? There's been for years as an industry we've pontificated about we've got to engage members more, but how what does it actually mean? What does an engaged member mean? And it's not just not opting out. That's not engagement. That's inertia, probably more than not opting out. It's about activity and action, and sort of making people feel like they've got something meaningful and they actually own an asset of some sort. And then we get to the point where it does hopefully start to become valuable. So when it feels like a member sort of feels like their pension is part of their long-term planning, hopefully they see it grow over the years. But how do you actually get them looking at that? And it could be, for example, through an app or through a website. Cushon, obviously, we're an app-first pension provider, so I'm not going to sort of drum on about that. But it's something that we do get a lot of people looking at their app because, everyone I suspect in this room's got a mobile phone. Everyone's got apps on it, and you look at open banking most days, ordering pizzas, ordering a cab. So to actually get people looking at their pension on an app is quite a big way forward. And then once you've done that, then you sort of try and look at the 3 R's, which are recruitment, retention and reward, because you're paying all this money, but if people don't value it, if they don't have any sense of ownership, if they're not really looking at it, then it's not really helping at all with recruiting people in, retaining people once they're there, and actually the rewards that you want to give people. So that starts to kind of move into that value for not only the employee but also for you as an employer. And then obviously all of this ultimately leads to improved member outcomes, and that's what we all want to do. We all want, not only from our own perspectives but also for our employees' perspectives, we want to have the best member outcomes that we can for all of our staff whilst they work for us. Now there is ownership, so it's not all doom and gloom, but it's typically it's too late in the process. So most people don't really feel any sense of ownership of their pension until it's too late, until it's really maybe that wake-up pack arrives through the door when someone hits 50. Even then, a lot of people won't even look at that. But typically that's when we tend to see kind of more people starting to get a bit more interested in their pension. So all of those kind of employees you've got, and think about your own demographics, but typically anyone under 50 is not really engaged. So are you actually getting any value out of the money you're paying in for them? And it's probably not helping with those 3 R's beforehand. And then in terms of a lack of ownership, what indicators are there that there actually is a lack of ownership? So we do a lot of research at Cushon, and some of the things we found out there, the average number of jobs that people hold is 5, so which means nowadays 5 pension pots. 1 in 4 people have lost track of at least one pot. So that's £27 billion worth of lost pensions. Government are working hard. There's various initiatives underway and legislation coming in to help with that, but nevertheless it's still a big issue for people. Something interesting in the research is that 1 in 3 people said that they would love to have all of their pension pots in one place, but not many people do. There are companies out there now that will help with that, and all providers look to try and help people consolidate into one pot, but nevertheless very few people still actually do it, even though a lot of them would like to do it. And then the final point there, that 1 in 5 people want their pension pots in their current active scheme. So that's an interesting one, because the whole kind of pot for life concept has got a lot of airtime last year. There's a consultation underway. Things might be stopped a bit by the election we've got coming up, but nevertheless that brings that concept of pot for life. So as an employee moves from one employer to another, their pension just automatically follows them, and that will stop a lot of the issues with people losing their pensions, but also help people get them all into one place. So we don't know, who knows where that will go, but there certainly seems to be some political will to make that happen. So I guess it's not impossible to create ownership, and what we want to try and do is create that sense of ownership way before people get to 50 or 55. We want to start it from as soon as they start working for you. As soon as people sort of enter the workforce, we want them to to try and sort of feel that sense of ownership. And there are some things, there's no panacea out there, but there are some things that can be done. And I guess the sort of trick is to try and engage and encourage those people early on in their working careers. The younger they are, then the better to try and get them, because then once they feel that they have a pension that they own, then they're going to be more, value it more, and they're going to be more engaged in it. So there's different ways to do it. One of them is climate change. So again, from a lot of the research that we've done, younger people tend to be more interested in climate change, and they feel more passionate about it. And you can see sort of some of the stats there. 40 to 50% across age groups would put more money into their pension if they felt that it was doing good things for the planet. So ways of trying to sort of engage those people are through through website, through kind of impact stories, showing people where their money's invested, showing them the projects it's invested in the renewables, in helping with climate change and carbon reduction, all of those things that that whole cohort of employees are really interested in. And by doing that, and we've trialled some of this, you can see people get more engaged. If they get a message saying, look, you're £150 a month, some of that has just paid for that wind farm, and here's a picture of it, and you're invested in that, you're helping the planet with your money every single month, and you start to see an uptick in people being engaged, and by definition feeling more sort of sense of ownership, and then also hopefully feeling more of a sense of loyalty to their employer. The best way to do that is through tech. As I said earlier, everyone uses the phone all the time. Some more than I, like my kids, never off their phones. But so, the way to do that, there's different ways you can sort of try and attract people in to look at their pension. And whilst we don't necessarily want people to look at their pension every single day, because that could get a bit scary if it's going up and down, just sort of drip feeding and having people feeling more empowered to look at their pension. There's no point just sending an annual benefit statement out once a year that comes through the letterbox and probably never gets read. That's never going to engage someone. That's never going to get anyone feeling any sense of ownership of their pension. And it's talking in plain English as well. So again, we talk a lot of jargon in our industry. So the best way to do it, and we try really hard to do this, is just simple messages to people. So we don't use jargon. We do campaigns, we do posters. There's different ways to just really boil it down to very simple messages that would hopefully again encourage people to pay more interest in their pension. My sort of final slide is that it's obviously it's not just about pensions. So there's also the sort of the conflicts that people have financially. So certainly younger people in particular. Well, that's great, but I'm not going to retire for 40 years. I'm going to want to buy a house in the interim. I might want to get married. I might want to raise a family. I might want to go on holiday. I'm just not even interested in thinking about that or locking my money away for that length of time. So having a workplace savings scheme. So there's been various trials have been done there. Nest did a really interesting trial, what they call the sidecar. So where employers employees have access to wider savings options alongside their pension, and we have a lot of clients where the employer will pay a percentage of members' salary into a workplace saving. And this really took off sort of during COVID, where basically people get an accessible fund. So it doesn't need to be much, could be a few hundred, could be £1,000, could be a few £1,000s they build up. But they feel that, okay, if I really need that money, and despite COVID actually, people didn't suddenly go in and withdraw all their cash, which is what some employers are worried about. But again, research we did at the time, people felt they just had that safety net if they needed it, of having an accessible pot that, in their view and their sort of thing, their employer put in place for them, and either funded it or didn't fund it, but they were able to fund it themselves. So it's important that we don't just focus purely on pensions, because obviously different demographics across all companies mean that pension is either a long way away or much nearer for most people. So that was my session done. Obviously happy to take any questions from anybody.
So we've got a few in the chat.
Yep.
Well done for stepping in at short notice. You didn't say how short notice it was, but it was seamless.
Thank you.
We had a few questions. While I just bring them up,
please.
Just say, I'm a massive fan of the workplace savings. The Nest Insights work is really insightful. There's lots of stuff in there about how it's not going to erode the pension savings as well. They've done lots of research. It's really solid stuff, so worth looking at. I think the first one, most popular question, is, whilst we wait for the pension dashboard, what would you like to see the next government do to encourage ownership?
Well, I think, personally, and also my company's view, which isn't necessarily the majority view in the market, I do think the pot for life concept is a really good one, because pots will build up quicker, or at the very least, they'll see them building up quicker because they'll see everything in one place. They won't have £1,000 here and 5,000 there that they never really keep track of. So I think if the new government, or whoever the government is, comes in and keeps that pot for life sort of initiative and consultation, and then ultimately brings it to life, I think that'd be a really valuable thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We've been encouraged to say new Parliament rather than new government.
Okay.
It doesn't make an assumption that anything's going to change.
That's a very good point.
So you can take that way as well.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
So the next question is, I guess, one of terminology. So the DC DB terminology is quite unhelpful. They're both couched as pensions, I suppose, but they're totally different products. So how, as an industry, could we change the narrative away from DC to something else? And the suggestion here is personal retirement savings. Yeah. And maybe that could help with ownership.
Yeah, I think, lifetime savings is my preferred choice, because it kind of says what it is. I mean, no one really knows what defined contribution pension means. I mean, it just not a concept 90% of the population would recognise. So I think lifetime savings, and if you couch it as that, then psychologically as well, people are thinking, well, yeah, this is for a lifetime, and I am saving, and it's going to be my lifetime savings, and if it's all in one place, I think, there's all sorts of different options and suggestions, but that's my preferred one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we've got two more. So quickly, how can employers handle pensions for high salary executives who frequently relocate and are unlikely to use the benefits? I assume that means foreign nationals, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So there's different potential options there. So, we do have a number of clients that use our workplace savings. So for those people that are higher earners and therefore either above the money purchase annual allowance or just have opted out of the pension scheme, then we do have some employers that use the sort of ISA range that we have to fund that, instead of just giving cash to people. Yeah. Obviously, if they're foreign nationals, then the rules potentially could affect that. Unfortunately, there's no global, let alone European-wide pension scheme yet. So due to all the different tax regimes, so I'm not really sure on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then we've got a question just in. So, it's important not to discourage young people from saving into pensions altogether. So, what's the best ideas to make workplace savings more flexible so that the pension isn't abandoned? Yeah.
So I mean, one idea that I think is a really good one would be to allow people to access their pots over their lifetime at certain life events. So, whether or not that's, for example, to buy a house. So if they are able to, there are rules that say, right, if you're buying a house, you can withdraw X% or X amount from your pension fund to fund that, to pay that for that deposit, or then also other, lifetime events as well, potentially. And I think if someone felt that, if they're 20, if about young people 20 or 25, if they think, well, I'm putting all this money in, but really I want to buy a bloody house, and I'm never going to get this money until I'm 70 probably. But if they knew that there was break periods where they could actually access it for something that would be really valuable to them, I think that would be a good idea. And they do that in Australia, and they do it in a couple of other countries as well.
Yeah, I think that marries with one of the previous speakers, Tim Perkins from Nudge, was talking about setting life goals and setting those kind of financial goals. So I guess that goes into that.
Yeah.
So I think we're out of time. I think I can see you're on stand 20.
Yes.
So if there are any more questions, I know I didn't quite get through them all, but thanks very much for the engagement on the app. And please rate the session. Take into account that Dave only found out he was doing it 5 minutes before. We'll be back in about 10 minutes, I think, for the next session. So
thank you very
much.
Thank you. Thank you.